I've been really, really looking forward to this, Michelle. I've enjoyed massively starting to work with you over the past couple of weeks. So to introduce you, you are a highly experienced HR leader, HR director. And I'm going to put you on the spot now because on your LinkedIn profile it says that you've been described as a breath of fresh air. And I'd love to know who and why has said that.
I think it's been one of those things that's kind of followed me. But in the very first one, it was interesting thinking about this. So the very first one was one of my MDs back in my kind of Isotron days, and she herself was a breath of fresh air. So it was like a really great big compliment. And then it has literally followed me around in all of my roles. And even recently, one of the recruiters I was talking to wrote back to me and said, "Oh, actually, you are a breath of fresh air." So it's been really nice that it's kind of carried on.
Stuck.
But I think primarily it's because I don't subscribe to the HR police kind of role. And I think that's kind of quite shocking to some people, in that I kind of don't believe in gatekeeping policies and knowledge. And actually, we deliver more when we're aligned to the business rather than being adversarial all the time. So I think that's kind
Nice,
of where it's come from, really.
nice. That's nice to hear. One of the things I wanted to start with, get your opinion on really, is that obviously 2020 has been a massive challenge for everybody, but specifically and understandably for HR professionals, it's been a massive challenge. Turning workforces into remote workforces and dealing with the fallout of furlough and etc. But yeah, I just wanted to know really what your biggest challenges have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much to choose from in 2020. What a
Yeah,
ridiculous year that none of
I
us
should take a
ever
seat.
predicted. I never would have said it would be that mad, honestly. And I don't want to use the unprecedented words. I'm not going to, but oh my goodness, it's been crazy. So I think firstly, I want to give a little shout out to all of my kind of HR colleagues that I've known this year. I have never seen such HR heroes in all my life. They've just done such a fantastic job. Then we've all massively stepped up. So I think just take a little moment to recognize the efforts that these
Absolutely.
people have gone through this year. I think what was kind of amazing to me was the roles that I was fulfilling on a regular basis. 1 hour I was a medical professional, a counsellor, IT support, a logistics partner, and doing my day job, which was absolute carnage at the best of times. So
Yeah.
I think there was that whole kind of almost like chameleon piece where we're being everything to everybody all of the time. And then that sheer ambiguity and volume of it all. I mean, I was on calls until late at night just talking about what on earth we're going to do, how it's going to work, what do we do with all these people that are currently in the office and can't be tomorrow. And I think that was the biggest thing, really. And there was no kind of instant guidance. Everybody was looking for this kind of magic piece of guidance that was going to come out, and it never really did. And I think that was what made it the biggest challenge, was that kind of ambiguity piece. But I do think the good outcome of all these challenges is it's kind of helped people to realize how valuable good HR is. And I think perhaps that wasn't there before. It's definitely kind of upped the profile of the function more than I ever would have expected. So yeah, I mean, many and varied challenges, but probably the worst and the biggest was the ambiguity of it all. That was the craziest bit, I
Yeah, I
think.
think for us in launching Vocaccio, we want the business to appeal to a HR manager in an SME that can we can help make their life a little bit easier. But having launched it at the time we did, there's this appreciation for actually the real breadth and depth of tasks that HR professionals handle, and particularly at this, as you say, everything seems to have just been dumped with HR. Like, well, you're this one's yours. You're like, okay, cool, right. Figure out what we're supposed to do now.
Exactly that.
Employee engagement has been like, it's understated to say it's been a buzzword of 2020, and I think rightly so. But it's been a real challenge, I think, and it's been brought to the fore because of the remote nature of businesses. But yeah, what do you think HR businesses can do to enhance, increase, or retain employee engagement with everything that's happening?
I think for me, I always kind of see, and always have done before Corona, but I always see kind of engagement as an opportunity to sort of share the workload. So I kind of always think it doesn't kind of sit just with HR, although it does naturally end up with HR somehow. But I think I always think about it as kind of sharing a piece of work. So sharing that kind of business strategy piece among the entire headcount, rather than holding it in the hands of 5 or 6 or 10 kind of senior leadership teams. So I kind of feel like it makes it all of a sudden much easier when I think about engagement being delivered by 150 people instead of those few humans. So for me, it's kind of it's pitching it as sharing the load, and then when you've cracked that piece, that engagement piece, it delivers by itself. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy snowball type effect, and I think when you get that right, it just connects. But for me, the big, almost like the spine of that engagement piece is those values, and I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but getting those business values right is the spine of everything else. So if you haven't got those right in the first place, you're going to struggle with the corona remote working piece. But if you have them right, they kind of flow through what you're doing anyway, so I think they kind of work.
I think it's given us a bit of an opportunity. If businesses weren't so clear on their values, and it wasn't something that was it wasn't something that a process that's been gone through recently, it's a great opportunity now to go, actually, in light of everything, we need to spend some time on this and use that as you say, as a starting place to pull some employees close and go, what does it feel like it's important to us as a business? Start asking those big questions. And having gone through it with Vocaccio, obviously we're getting it going, but drawing everybody, so there's 4 of us, we're saying, okay, well, this is where we've got so far. Getting the employees to actually add their thoughts to that, rather than say, oh, here are the company values.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's got to be that collaborative piece of work. I know that when we did them at Multivac, I kind of drew them from real, genuine employee experience, and actually to roll those out then to the rest of the business was absolutely fantastic, because we could literally stand up and say, well, that was you, Dave, when you did that piece of work for that customer, and it really made a massive difference, because all of a sudden they could connect to it because it was real. And I think that's so important. I'm kind of really absolutely passionate off the scale about having values that work for your business and that are made for your business, rather than these wallpaper words like integrity and honesty and accountability. Those things are absolutely important and essential behaviors. They're not values if they don't mean
But they're
anything
not
in
values.
business.
Jack, who's our marketing manager, he's done a really good job of making the values, basically communicating them in language that we would use.
Yeah, brilliant.
So it's not just like, you may well have something that could be ambiguous, but then it says, oh, but this is what it means to us in a sentence.
Perfect.
And I think that sort of, like you said, really touches on what you're saying there, in making that part of stories.
Yes.
So you can say, then actually, that's why we do these things. And as you will know, we've done X, Y, and Z, and it creates tension, traction, I should say, between those values and the people. I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you think of any businesses? Do any businesses sort of stand out to you that you've seen through the madness that is 2020 that have stood out from their sort of employee engagement side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones that I've kind of really enjoyed. I mean, I think I said to you I'd read a whole ebook on pandemic values by Deborah Corey that was just absolutely brilliant. But one of the things that's featured on my LinkedIn feed a lot is Brewdog. I don't know if you kind of follow Brewdog, but they are absolutely brilliant, and they've done some really nice stuff
with Aldi. I've seen
the marketing wars and stuff. I love all of that. But I think they did some really nice things around sending their employees a case of beer. They published all of their beer recipes so that people could brew at home their Brewdog beers. They have a virtual staff bar, which, let's be real, is an open Zoom call, but what a brilliant idea that sticks with their values about doing stuff together. And I love that. I think that's just such a great thing.
Yeah, it's cool. We've done one thing which I think is quite cool, and it seems to be received quite well, is that we've got a half an hour slot weekly called Culture Corner.
Yeah.
And it really relates to one of our core values, which is to gain and share knowledge. And we read for half an hour, and whether we've had like skeleton crew in and out of the office, but we'll spend half an hour in a meeting room and just read together. And at the end of that half an hour, we'll give a little summary of what we've read. And Brilliant. It kind of tackles a few things. It actually gets us to spend some time together. It's one of the things I was thinking when Jack started, particularly, so how do I make him part of the team when we're not all together? But also tackles that other side of things where I want people within the business to learn and to share knowledge. And it seems to be going down quite well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I really like it. We did something really similar at Multivac with our management development program where we had a kind of read along book. And so we established and created all of the modules for the work that happened, but we had a read along chapter of a set book. And they had to pre-read the chapter and then bring their thoughts with them. And we almost had like a pre-form kind of thing they had to fill out that kind of captured their thoughts in a structured way. But it was brilliant, and it was amazing to see all of the different perspectives that you get back in. And there were some chapters where we were like, as HR people, this is way too fluffy, it's never going to fly, it's never going to work, and they would come in and they'd really get it and they'd love it, and we were really panicking that it would be bad. But it was amazing to have everybody come at it with their own perspectives and to give them that time. I mean, it was 10 minutes, but giving them that
Yep.
time just to kind of think about something other than the day job made such
Do
a big
something
difference.
else other than, make phone
Yeah,
calls or whatever it
yeah,
is, that you do. And I think that if you're doing other things generally right around the business, you can afford these bits of time, I think. And they're the things that I think will increase retention, hopefully will increase knowledge, therefore you can increase service. This is the plan anyway.
yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm nodding along. It's right.
One of the things that I think businesses will struggle with now, though, is how to retain people with the kind of remoteness that's going on, because maybe you could argue that those conversations that you might pick up in the workplace where someone seemingly is unhappy or there's seemingly something up. I'd really like to know your thoughts really on how we can, in a remote world, try and increase, improve retention.
Yeah, I mean, massive question. I'm not going to give you an amazing answer, but
Oh, I was ready. I was ready
get
with
your
my pen.
get your pen.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
think for me, it's about continuing the connections remotely. And I think a lot of businesses have forgotten that because you forget, don't you? You just forget. You forget the kind of water cooler chats, the coffee making chats, the wandering between meeting chats. And so actually for me, it's kind of trying to continue the things you did face to face, but in a remote way. I mean, at Multivac, we made a huge effort in my team to convert all